Greetings everyone again. We're going to continue with the histology of the bone. This is the second part of the lecture. And what we're going to be covering now is the structural arrangement of bone. So basically how the components, the cells, the matrix, how they're arranged together to give me certain types of bone. So depending on the layout of the components, there can be two types of bone. We have what we call compact bone, and we have spongy bone. And spongy bone is also referred to as trabecular bone. It's also referred to as cancellous bone. So any of those three terms mean the same thing. Okay, so let's take a look at compact bone first. Compact bone is the type of bone that is found along the shaft of the long bones. So remember, long bones had upper end, lower end, and a shaft in between them. So in the shaft is usually where we find compact bone. And it's also found on the surfaces of flat bones. Remember, flat bones were the ones that had surfaces that are really close together, so there's barely any space between them. So this is where we find compact bone. Compact bone is specifically arranged as what we call osteons. Osteons are units, so you can think of them as smaller segments, and what they do is they become densely packed together in order to give me compact bone. So what we're looking at here is a cross section in the shaft of a compact bone, in the shaft of a long bone, and then they've magnified it so you can see what it looks like on the inside. So you can see here that the bone is divided into these circular segments. Now each of these by itself, okay, you can even see the black line here, each of these by itself is called an osteon. Okay, and so in this bone, for example, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, roughly 9 osteons in this region here. Okay, and they're densely packed together, so you can see that there's barely any space in between them. Okay, and whatever space is present is usually going to be filled by matrix. Okay, now the characteristic of an osteon is that it is composed of sheets of bone, okay, that are arranged in a circular pattern or a circular shape. So you can see that each osteon is composed of like these rings of bone, okay, and then the ring kind of surrounds this central neurovascular bundle that has, you know, an artery, a vein, a vessel, lymphatic vessel here, and a nerve, okay? So this, and even here in this segment here, you can see how the the structures are found within this canal in the middle of the osteon, okay? So each osteon has a central canal, okay, which has a neurovascular bundle, and then surrounding this neurovascular bundle you have circular sheets of bone, okay, and then that ends up forming a single osteon. So osteons have the central haversian canal. That's the canal that had the neurovascular bundle. It's called the central haversian canal, surrounded by concentric rings of bone. Okay, so there are concentric rings of compact bone surrounding the canal. Okay, and each ring is called a lamella. Okay, and in between the lamella, or in between the lamellae is plural, in between them we have spaces that contain the osteocytes. So that was similar to the whole concept of cartilage, where we had the chondrocytes and the lacunar spaces as well. So it's similar in bone. Okay. Compact bone is generally tough and heavy, which makes sense because the osteons are compacted together. They're really close. There's barely any space between them, so it tends to be really tough and heavy. Okay, so this is another section. In the middle here, okay, this is the haversian canal, and it's surrounded by the concentric circles of compact bone, which are called lamellae. Okay, and then you can see that you can see these black dots here. Okay, those are the lacunar spaces where we find the osteocytes. Remember, osteocytes are basically bone cells that have been surrounded by matrix, and they're found in these little spaces called lacunae, similar to cartilage. Okay, and each of these separately is called an osteon. Okay, now I hope I'm not really sure if you guys can see this clearly. This is honestly the only decent picture I found. Okay, but this is a section of compact bone. These empty spaces here are where the haversian canals are, and then if you kind of look, you can see the circular concentric lamellae just kind of surrounding the haversian canal, and then these black dots here are where the lacunar spaces containing the osteocytes are. The other type of bone we agreed is spongy bone, and then, kind of from the name, you can get the feeling that it's more of a, like the type of bone that contains spaces, so similar to a sponge, basically. Now, spongy bone is the type of bone that is composed of thin plates. Okay, so you basically have plates of bone, and these plates are called trabeculae or trabeculae. Okay. Trabeculae are interconnected with each other. So basically you have multiple plates that are connected to each other, and they form what we call a trabecular network. It is very porous, meaning that it has lots of spaces, containing spaces within the trabecular network. And the importance of these spaces is that this is where the bone marrow is found. So basically where the blood cells come from, the bone marrow is found within the trabecular network spaces. Each trabecular plate consists of lamellae and lacunar spaces with osteocytes. So the trabeculae or the trabecular plate, okay, is basically where you have the bone cells and the surrounding matrix. They form a plate, okay? And then because each plate is just connected to the next one, so it's not packed with it like in the compact bone, you're going to end up having spaces in between each plate and the next one. And within that space, you're going to find the bone marrow. Spongy bone is generally less densely arranged and therefore lighter than compact bone. Okay, so let's take a look at what it looks like. Okay, now each of these is called a trabecular plate. Okay, and if we look at a cross section of the trabecular plate itself, it has a similar structure where you have the lamellae or the plates of bone. Okay, and then they have the lacunar spaces with the osteocytes inside them. Okay, this is an osteoclast because it's larger. Okay, so you've got the lamellae, you've got the lacunar spaces, so the similar shape of, the similar arrangement of the bone components. The only difference is that they are arranged to form plates that are separated from each other by spaces. So if we take this as one plate, okay, and then this is another one, okay, they're interconnected by this trabecular plate here, okay, but you can clearly see that there's a space in between the two, okay, and this is where you're going to find the bone marrow. Okay, so this is a section of spongy bone. Okay, you can clearly see that there's a lot of air spaces, a lot of empty spaces in between the bone components. Okay, and then these are the separate plates that are interconnected with each other. Okay, so quick question. Which of the following statements is not true regarding spongy bone? A, it is denser than compact bone. B, it is the location of the bone marrow. C, it is less dense than compact bone. And D, it is found in the bones of joints. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a second to think about that. Okay, remember you're looking for the statement that is not true or the statement that is incorrect. Okay, so if you answered A, you are correct. Spongy bone is less dense than compact bone, and therefore tends to be lighter. Okay, another question. The bone cells located in the trabecular matrix of spongy bone are called marrow, osteoblasts, osteocytes, or osteoclasts. So which of these cells is found in the matrix? Okay, all right, so let's give you another minute for that. Okay, hopefully you've answered it by now. If you answered osteocytes, you are correct. Remember, osteocytes are osteoblasts that have been surrounded by the matrix and matured. So if the cell is surrounded by matrix, whether it's spongy or compact bone, it's going to be an osteocyte. Okay, so in summary, bone is a type of connective tissue with all the components with connective tissue. It's got the cells, it's got the extracellular matrix. Okay, in bone, the matrix is composed of organic and inorganic substances, organic being collagen and elastic fibers, and inorganic being calcium and other minerals. There are three types of bone cells that differ according to, that differ in structure, they differ in their function, so make sure you know all three types. You have the osteoblasts, the osteocytes, and the osteoclasts. And depending on the location and required function, bone can either be compact, which remember was made of osteons that are tightly packed together, or spongy, which was made of tubercular plates that had spaces in between them. Okay, and that wraps up this video and also wraps up the lecture. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was useful for you, and as always, I am available for questions and any help that you may need. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you guys soon.